Well, thank you very much to everybody for coming. And I know there are a few people still out there getting food, but we are going to go ahead and get started because in the interest of time. And I would like to welcome you for this last talk out of our week, Wealth and Poverty Week, with a focus on rural Appalachia. This is our last talk in that series. But it's not the end of our talks. We have a lot more coming down the pipeline, a lot of events, public lectures, research talks, even field trips related to wealth and poverty. And we have a flyer. This, if you take a look at this flyer, which is, we have several of them up at the front. You can pick one up on your way out. And we also have a certificate that is a wealth and poverty certificate that actually ties in really well with the talks that we've had this week and all the other activities for the rest of the semester. And we have another handout on of that also that you can pick up on your way out. But for today, we are here to listen to the wonderful discussion of the Little Cities as a classroom. And for those of you who don't know, the Little Cities of Black Diamonds microregion consists of a series of remnant local mining towns surrounded by the Wayne National Forest in southeastern Ohio. It's culturally defined by nationally significant events that took place during the Hocking Valley coal boom era of 1870 to 1925. The environmental landscape of the region is defined by the legacy of unregulated coal mining during the boom era that required nearly a century of recovery that is still taking place to this day. The region covers the rugged hill country of present-day southern Perry County, eastern Hocking County, northern Athens County, and western Morgan County, and is defined by the Sunday and Monday Creek watersheds that feed the Hocking River. Community members, faculty, and students, including those on the panel today, have collaborated on various forms of university-community partnership with the Little Cities region. And on the panel today, we have Dr. Rachel Terman, who's an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology here at OU. We have John Winnenberg of the Little Cities of Black Diamonds, and we have two students. We are very pleased to have two students, Tasha Edge, who's a BSS major and is pursuing the Wealth and Poverty Certificate that I mentioned earlier, and Wes Gilkey, who's in Sociology, Criminology, Russian major, and is also pursuing a Russian Studies Certificate, and War and Peace Certificate, busy. And without further ado, I would like to welcome our panelists.
I'm John Winnenberg, a native of the Little Cities region, and I'll be talking about that here today.
Yep. And I'm Rachel Terman again. I'm in Sociology and Anthropology, and I think we can just quickly say hello.
Hello, I'm Tasha Edge, and I am a student.
Once again, I'm Wes Gilkey. I'm a student here. I'm from Athens.
Okay, and so how we're going to do this, and we have to remember to stand up, is that John will go ahead and speak first and give us a little context about the region and his work in the area, and I'll give a brief talk about the faculty perspective and some of this university and community engagement. And then our two students will have a kind of question and answer session with them and get their perspectives as students who have been involved in some of this work. And we'll hopefully try to abbreviate our comments a little bit just because of time today. And so hopefully we'll have some time for questions and answers from you all at the end as well.
Let's get this thing started, huh? Well, Edna did a great job of giving a good overview of the region, the Little Cities microregion, so I'm just going to skip over a few details about who we are and where we are, if I can figure out how to make this work. There we go. So you can see geographically where we are, not far from Athens. The mineral region, it was called in its day, part of Appalachian, Ohio. We have a very provocative story in the Little Cities region that centers around labor union history, coal mining, immigration, all in the late 1800s. Boom towns with lots of overhanging Western-style looking porches. This is the community of Corning, which you'll only see a few of those buildings left today. As Edna said, the boom was from the 1870s to the 1920s. Our nationally significant stories are centered around labor union history, race and immigration, and environmental history. We have assets that come from our story. Our recovering natural environment, the Wayne National Forest, the architecture I mentioned, and history. There's a picture there of Robinson Cave, which is the unofficial birthplace of the United Mine Workers of America. We like to share our history, so part of what we do is have events. We've published books about our history. We have a registry of over 6,000 miners that worked in the coal fields over the years. For those of you who've been marching on the steps of the Athens County Courthouse, those are the miners there in, I think, 1918 at a district miners meeting on a place that you guys all are familiar with these days. Our race history is really interesting in the sense that many African Americans were brought in to serve as strike breakers during the early organizing of the unions in the area. But particularly one community, Renville, became a racially integrated community, 50% black, 50% white, nearly 1,000 people live there. Today, it's Ohio's smallest incorporated village with about 38 residents, and we have Ohio University students active, and here's an exhibit OU students put together for the town hall building. We also have significant international immigrant history. These are my people, the Germans who came to the little town of Corning right next to Renville. My family actually came as shopkeepers from Germany to Renville following the boom. The postmaster in Renville, which was 50% African American population, spoke 5 different languages to accommodate all the arriving immigrants and their families. And folks led a pretty harmonious life there, although there were incidents of racial strife. But people worked along together and were paid equally there, unlike a lot of the other mines in the area. So depending on the community or the coal mining community, the immigration pattern might have been Welsh or Hungarian or Scotch or Irish. Every town and even neighborhoods within towns follow different immigration patterns. Our environmental history is one of unregulated mining. Some of our creeks turn this orange when it hasn't rained for a while from acid mine drainage. The coal boom was during an era where there were no environmental regulations. Today, things have changed. One of the landmark events was during the Depression, when the federal government came in and bought up significant, today it's about, I think, 28,000 acres of land in this region, creating the Wayne National Forest. But at that time in the 1930s, it was really a work program, putting people through the Civilian Conservation Corps and the WPA programs back to work, working on planting trees and fighting erosion in the region. So that's had a big, significant impact on who we are and the landscape of where we live. Part of what we've been about is building a positive, alternative identity around our communities. We've taken our history and the term Little Cities of Black Diamonds. We've taken our forest and the fact that we are now today more little cities of the forest than we are little cities of coal, Black Diamonds being coal, and we use those as positive identities. We use those as our wealth. We are known as impoverished communities, but we tend to not operate spending a lot of time thinking about our poverty. We think a lot about our wealth and our assets, so we use a asset-based development model. We've done a lot of publications and media. If you go to littlecietiesofblackdiamonds.org or the Little Cities Archive, you can learn more about those publications and media videotapes that tell the story of the area. We have a number of events throughout the year to celebrate our culture and history, as well as our nature. Coming up is the Tour de Forest Benefit Bicycle Ride on April 29th. We have a series of events we call Appalachian Spring in the spring, and a Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day in the town of Shawnee in the fall. We've been very involved in promoting the restoration of our architecture in our region. If any of you been out to the Eclipse Company town, this is what the Eclipse Company store looked like in 2008, and that's what it looks like today. And you see other buildings in Shawnee and Corning and other communities there that we are working on restoring. We give a lot of guided tours to tell these stories to the public. We try to document our story as much as possible through historic markers. We have folks who learn important characters in our history and who tell the story as living history characters. We are very early on decided we needed to involve young people in our communities in our efforts, and in many ways that's led to our topic today, which is Little Cities as a Classroom, and engaging folks both in our public schools and at regional campuses and in being involved in our story. We've learned a lot through that process, and we have some rules for engagement that I'd like to share with you today regarding that. And probably the most important rule to us is that when we engage with university campus partnerships, we're really working toward engagements that benefit others. Others may be people in our community, or others may be we benefit you. So it's a mutually beneficial type of arrangement. This is the town hall in Renville that went through a great restoration project and has had a number of university classes, particularly at the Patton College, involved in raising funds for historic markers and doing research there. We think that these engagements should be mutually beneficial, so Tasha and Wes are in this picture at Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day, where they learned a lot about our community. They benefited by being in character and part of a temperance march at Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day this year. Our theme was temperance and taverns, and inside that building we had a microbrewery speakeasy set up celebrating our love of alcohol, particularly during Prohibition in these communities, and students not only researched the story but also and shared their research with folks at Little Cities Day, but they participated in the Temperance March that was staged on Main Street. So everyone benefited. Our event was more beneficial because of university students being involved, and obviously we hope that you guys benefited, and they'll talk about that as part of the experience. Another important rule is that even though poverty is part of our story and we don't deny it, we really look for people to recognize assets when they visit our community. There's nothing worse than having university folks coming and have these dreadful stories about how bad it is where we live. You know, particularly journalism students who go for the jugular vein at times, looking for the most shocking story of poverty in our region. So we really ask people. We don't want to whitewash things, but we also want people to recognize their strengths in these communities, including our natural environment. We want to look for projects and engagements that are sustainable over time. Just for you to come for one day and leave is not very beneficial to us. So we're looking for relationships with faculty and programs that want to stay involved and become a part of the redevelopment of these communities. We really ask you to respect local wisdom, and we try to connect you to local wisdom. And see that as one of the most important things we have to offer, real life people with real life experiences. You know, here we have folks from the Hungarian Community of Drakes giving actually a international tour of Hungarian citizens coming through our region, a visit to the Monroe Cemetery in Drakes, and telling about that coal community. We like people to help identify and solve problems with us. This picture is meant to be funny, but actually it happened here in Athens, if any of you know, when a rock came off the hill and crushed a house and car. But we definitely need all the support and assistance we can get in terms of addressing some of our problems and challenges in these communities. So we look to the university as partners in doing that. We like to take you to new settings, particularly even just sit-down learning settings. This is Dr. Franz Doppens and students in the Tecumseh Commons in Shawnee. So we try to provide space for you to come out and do your field work, whether it be in a classroom setting or out in the field. These are students at the Pawpaw Festival, learning about African American history from Kathy Nelson from the Underground Railroad group in the state. We think the best engagements are one that really engage you in hands-on activities and exploration. These are students doing fish studies in Sunday Creek, in the East Branch of Sunday Creek. And those are students visiting the Gavin Power Plant on the Ohio River as part of a week-long Appalachian Studies course that we did for a number of years. We really need your help and support in researching and documenting our story. So we love folks who want to help research who we are and what's happened in our communities, and also ways in which we can change things in our community. And if you can't tell there's a guy documenting the story in downtown Shawnee, but we love the pictures and the reports and that type of work that you do. And we want you to celebrate and recognize your work with us. There's nothing worse than having folks come in, do a project, and never ever tell you what they found out or what they did because the semester's over. So we really look forward to opportunities to celebrate together. This is in the town of Renville, where students in the social studies education program at Patton College raise funds for a historic marker telling the history of Renville, and this was the day of the unveiling of the marker. And we like to share the results with the community. This is a Agents of Change, a labor history workshop that involved a number of actually performers and professors from Ohio University sharing the labor history story. And we really are looking for arrangements that are collaborative over time, and that involves needing mutual respect and understanding. And over time, you can establish real and sincere relationships, which is the foundation for long-term collaboration. And these are 110 steps. Imagine that. Ohio University students cleaned, used to be steps to the public school in Renville. Students uncovered those and painted the railing, and they remind me of two important principles: that our work is incremental. We do it one step at a time a lot of times, and we learn as we go. We oftentimes don't have a blueprint for exactly what we're going to do, so we interact and research together and participate together in figuring out problems, and hopefully we're in it for the long haul, 110 steps in that instance. So if you need more information, research on photos and historic documents of the region, littlecitiesarchive.org, or things that are going on with the Little Cities of Black Diamonds, littlecitiesofblackdiamonds.org. Great. So thank you. Hopefully I stayed within a reasonable time frame.
I'm actually very impressed, and I hope that I can do as good of a job as you did of getting through your ideas. Okay, so I am sort of new to the university and just met John last year, and we, I started doing some work with Little Cities of Black Diamonds fairly recently. So I'd like to offer you kind of my faculty perspective on why I'm including some of this work in my classes, and also with the caveat that our partnership is kind of new, and so I'm not trying to wow you with all the things that I've done so far, but just give you kind of my perspective on it. So just to talk a little bit about my experience as a faculty member, I'll kind of start with my experience as a student, actually. And this is a picture of my professor from when I was an undergraduate. Her name is Elizabeth Engelhart. And she has a very fancy position now at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. But back when I knew her, well, I still know her, but back when I had her as a teacher, she was assistant professor at West Virginia University, and she had been an undergraduate student at Duke University and had a full scholarship to that university, and part of her scholarship program was about how to give back to her community once she was done with school. And her interpretation of that was to do service learning with her students in the Appalachian region. That was her kind of area of study. And so she did that in her classes, and I was one of her students, and I did service learning with her as a student. And I kind of, didn't know what was going on. I just signed up for her class because I thought it was an interesting topic, and did the service learning project. And what we did was we went to this organization called High Rocks for Girls, which is in rural West Virginia. And it's kind of a youth empowerment program for teenage girls. And so we did a service learning project there during the semester, and then afterwards I ended up getting an internship with High Rocks, and then sort of circuitous route, but I ended up writing my master's thesis about this organization and then going on to get my PhD, and this kind of work all informed my interest in young people in Appalachia and how they relate to their communities and whether they stay or leave and that kind of thing. And so I really traced back my whole career in some ways back to this service learning experience that I had with Dr. Engelhardt many years ago now. So, and thinking about how she traces it back to her undergraduate experience, I think it's really interesting to think about how some of those experiences that students have can be really transformative to them. And here at Ohio University, this idea of transformative education is part of the kind of language we use to talk about what our goals are with education. And this is OU's vision statement, right? Ohio University will be the nation's best transformative learning community. And so I think that because we have this idea of transformative education as part of our goal here at OU, I think that service learning and community engagement really lend itself to those goals. And we can kind of, not exploit, but we can kind of, I think that having that as part of the vision of the university makes it a very logical step for us to get engaged with the community here as part of that process of transformative education. So I wanted to share a quote from a student from last semester. This was one of Tasha and Wes's classmates, so it's not you guys, not one of your quotes, but so I'm not telling on you or using your words, but she wrote about her experience participating in Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day. As John talked about, the students did some research on alcohol consumption and also substance use and abuse, both historically and currently. And this was for my Sociology of Appalachia class. And so they went to and presented the research at the Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day, and also had previously gone and met with community members and kind of gotten to know some of the people who were involved in the day, and got to meet the mayor, which I think the students were very excited about. And so this is her response. She says, the component of the class that stands out to me the most, and one of my favorite class projects throughout my years at Ohio University, was preparing for and presenting at the Little Cities of Black Diamonds Festival. Though our class was assigned a topic, the research we chose to do and how we conducted our poster and research was our choice. The freedom of putting together and linking information by ourselves really gave me the independence to do research the way I wanted to do it. I think this would help in future assignments and job prospects. This to me was extremely helpful but challenging as well because we had to carve our own path. On top of that, the project is going to be something that I will always remember in my undergraduate career. I talked with locals, learned stories and histories of the people of Appalachia, and being able to relate to many of them drove it home. To immerse yourself into a culture and then to make connections with people, as well as learning something new about the place you grew up in, was icing on the cake. And so I thought that was, I thought she was expressing that, she did have this kind of transformative experience in her education, doing this project with Little Cities of Black Diamonds. And I'll point out that the project that John and I kind of came up with for students last semester was not a huge deal. I mean, we planned it and everything, and the students put a lot of work into it, but it wasn't it wasn't the entire course or anything. It was kind of just a portion of the course that semester. And so for me, as a faculty member teaching a course like Sociology of Appalachia, and also being involved with a wealth and poverty theme, I'm really interested in having students connect some of the theories that we talk about in class with a practical application of them, and seeing how those theories match up to real life experiences or real life applications. And I am particularly concerned with this because I think that sometimes when we are engaged with topics in an academic setting, there's a tendency for us to engage in this process of othering. So as sociologists, we think about ways inequality is reproduced in society, and part of the way that might happen is that we tend to group people into us and them, or us and other people. And so I think that can be a pitfall of teaching something like Sociology of Appalachia, where we can be reading these sociological studies of places in Appalachia, or reading histories about people in Appalachia, and so we can be talking about that in the classroom, but that can end up making it seem like we're in the classroom talking about these people, these other people, right? And so as one of the ways that I try to break down that process is by incorporating this kind of community engagement into my classroom. So again, and also I think that the wealth and poverty theme is also a way in which we can, I think, very importantly confront some of these issues of inequality in society, but I think it's also really good to think of this process of othering and questioning ourselves when we're doing that in our study, in our research, and that kind of thing. And these are some more pictures of my students at Little Cities with Black Diamonds this past fall. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about how to get started with some of this type of work, despite there are plenty of reasons not to do so. So for me as a faculty member, I'm really passionate about doing this kind of work because for the reasons that I've already stated, and my area of research is in Appalachia as well, and so for me it makes a lot of logical sense to do so. But at the same time, I put these, I like alliteration a lot. So time, tenure, and transportation, there's lots of things that can stop you from getting involved in this kind of stuff. Time especially. It does take a lot of extra time to work with a community member, figure out all the logistics of how students are going to get to where and when, and integrating it into your syllabus and that type of thing. That can, I think sometimes it might be more beneficial for me to not spend time on that and to spend time on research publications towards my tenure application. But hopefully I think that this will be part of that as well. And so there are just many ways in which these kinds of projects, I think, involve a time commitment and work commitment. But the way that I have been able to kind of do it so far is to start really small. And so I just started by trying to meet a lot of community members. So in addition to John, my students have gone out and talked to Live Healthy Appalachia, Rural Action, Athens Village, the Appalachian Peace and Justice Network. We did a small project with Live Healthy Appalachia a year ago, I guess now. And so trying some really small, manageable things for the semester is a great way to start, and is a way to not commit to too much before you're ready to do so. And also find someone who you enjoy working with. So I think that's really important, and finding a community partner. And then also I have to give a shout out, of course, to the Center for Campus and Community Engagement, who are really, really helpful in navigating all of this kind of the ins and outs of partnerships between the campus and community. And they have established relationships with many community members and have a lot of programs and support for faculty who want to do this kind of work. For students, I'll just say that you can look out for C-designated courses. So this is something that's somewhat new to the university. If you're interested in courses that involve a service learning component, you can look for those C-designated courses. In our Wealth and Poverty Certificate, which Dr. Wangui talked about in the beginning of the session today, involves a service learning component, and so there are many classes that fulfill that requirement. So for those that might be interested to check that out. There's also, Diana, maybe you can confirm this. I meant to look this up to confirm it before I put it on the slide, but I didn't. I think there's a service learning certificate available or in the works at some point. Okay, yeah.
Yes, there will be a community engagement honors pathway.
Okay, yeah.
In, I think it's 2018, where students will have an opportunity to experience a variety of different community engagement activities, both service learning C classes as well as co-curricular engagement activities, and they'll have an honors institution.
Okay.
that pathway.
Oh, right. Oh, wonderful. Okay, yeah. So some things in the pipeline in the works in terms of a certificate or recognition for students who are committed to this kind of work in their undergraduate studies. I also recommend that students talk to faculty. This is something that I never would have thought of or did when I was an undergraduate student, but if you look up faculty on the university website, it usually has their research interests listed. And so if there's a topic that you're interested in, you can find a faculty member who does things around that topic. They may already be doing some of this type of thing, or you can ask if there are opportunities for you to get involved in community engagement courses or other experiences. And for community members, I also just recommend the same things for faculty members, again, to have the idea of starting out small and meet up with faculty members who might be good partners for you, and then also, again, to contact the CCCE if you're interested in this type of work. Okay, so I think that I went through mine in a good amount of time. So with the last part of our session today, I think that maybe the most exciting part for me anyways is to talk to our students who participated in Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day last semester and just get their kind of feedback and perspectives from that experience. So we'll just, I think, ask you a couple questions, and again, I'm going to be kind of trading off the microphone, maybe sort of awkwardly while we do this. Yeah, I think it would be good for the camera if we all stand up. Can you talk a little bit about what you see, or if there was a kind of added value to your educational experience from doing this thing as part of your class, as part of the class last semester, or was it like on the first day when you came into class and I said, we're going to go do this thing and we're going to drive 45 minutes to get there? Were you thinking, oh no, maybe I shouldn't take this class? And just give us your kind of perspective on if it was helpful, if it was, if it was too much or overwhelming or what. You want to start?
Sure. Okay, so the ways that this class benefited my education. So as a little background, I grew up here in Athens. I consider myself, an Appalachian kid. I grew up and I had pretty good opportunities growing up, but I saw a lot of my family members, friends, other people around me who didn't. And that's kind of what inspired me to get into sociology, was to kind of help those people, the people that I grew up with, to make my place that I called home a better place. So being that I went into a Sociology of Appalachia class, I kind of have an idea of what the class was going to be like when I went in. And it wasn't so much an eye-opener for me as it was something that gave me new ideas, that confirmed things for me, that gave me an initiative. That, yeah, there are people out here that are working on this. There are people out here that are doing this. I would say two ways that it really was a positive benefit to my education. One is that I can see myself kind of taking the same track that you did now and having a PowerPoint presentation saying, this was my, professor way back in the day who did this with us, and now I'm doing it with my students. This has given me inspiration, like, yes, now I've applied here to OU. I want to try and focus on maybe rural development. I want to focus on things that are in this community. I know that there's a place for that now. There are people who care. There is a school of thought that revolves around it, and I know that I want to be a part of it. The second part that's really beneficial is the fact that this is probably, as much as I love all of the other sociology classes that I've taken because I'm a nerd, this was probably the first class that really gave me the opportunity to work on something, to look up research, to invest time into it, and then to actually go into the community and apply that within the same, span of a few short weeks. We worked on these posters. We went there, and I was talking to people about their own culture and their own history, which was also my culture and my history. I did a project that was on the economic impacts of moonshining in Appalachia, and I got to talk about, how people used moonshining as an economic a way of having economic assistance in times where maybe the coal mining was dwindling, or maybe they were doing it as a way to I don't know. What is the word? Yeah, well, breaking the law. Maybe they were just vigilantes. But, people would say, oh, wow, I can't believe that all these little nooks and crannies in these hills were being used for running moonshine, and that it was so powerful. And this is where the temperance movement took off, it was down here, and we're talking about labor unions and all these connections and pieces. And those people were then getting inspired, and those people were getting invested in the community, and they were then thinking, wow, this is really great. I'm learning things about my community. So not only did it help me, but it helped them. And that, going back to what John was saying, I think that is part of what makes it really successful, and something that I would love to do in all of my classes, really.
So for me, Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day was a great experience. I'm also from this area, from Cheshire, actually. And going to Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day, I was able to present my project, which was on effective community development. And while I was there, I was able to communicate with the locals about what they're already doing in a lot of ways, and then some other solutions that they could employ. And it was also really beneficial for me as a student to be able to lead myself down this path, because the project was not very much structured. We had a lot of range as to what we did. As you can tell, Wes did his sort of historical analysis, and I was more looking toward the future and solutions for some of the problems.
So can you tell us about your perspective about the assignment and the experience, and if there's anything that could have been better about it, or maybe in terms of the time commitment or the structure or the guidance, or what would have made the experience even better for you?
So for me, I live about an hour and a half away. So the commute to campus and then to Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day and the Shawnee area was kind of a lot, but it was really rewarding. And if I had it to do over again, I would want to go back more and be more involved in the community and really find out what they think the problems are, because there's only so much that I can research online. And also, I just think that at the beginning, there wasn't a whole lot of structure for the assignment. And as a student who's used to, you follow A, B, and C on the rubric, that was a little confusing, but it was really rewarding, because you're not going to have a whole lot of structure when you go out into the field and do your own research.
Yeah, I agree that a student who's taking this class, when they walk in and they look at that syllabus and they see what they're going to do, you have to realize that this is going to be a commitment of time. It's going to be a commitment of responsibility, and you have to, when you're going out in the community, you have to realize that you are not only representing yourself, but you're representing the institution. You're representing your community. So for someone who might not care so much about, grades or doing well, might not have as much success as we had with it. In order for a project like this to succeed, you have to have students that are interested and who really care. And I think that's an important thing for students and faculty to consider. The time constraint is a big one. I mean, I spent a lot of time researching for this project, throwing together, a poster, commuting back and forth. But at the same time, you can't just build a poster and go there. We had the opportunity to go there 2 times, once to talk to community leaders and members, and then another time to go back and actually present our research and be a part of the community event, Little Cities of Black Diamonds Day. And I think that's an integral part of it. You have to kind of have both of those things in order to really be able to successfully work in the community with a project like this. So if there's any drawback, I would say that that might be it, but at the end of the day, I think that that's a small gripe in the bigger picture of what we gained from it.
One of the things that we experience in rural Appalachian Ohio and other rural areas around the country is brain drain and losing bright people like this from our communities. And we also want our children and to move on and have great opportunities, and we understand that oftentimes we don't have those opportunities. So my question for you guys is, how did this impact your relationship with Southeastern Ohio and your home area in terms of your wanting to stay or contribute, or wanting to, what I thought I was doing when I got out of college was to get the hell out of here. So what's your experience with the relationship to place and with this project? Did it influence you any?
I'd say absolutely it influenced me. Before we started this project, I really wanted to get out of Appalachia. I've been here my whole life. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for what I want to do, or at least I didn't think that there was. But researching effective community development is something that is really at the core of what I am studying as a behavioral science major. So it gave me a connection to the place that I've always called home, but I never really knew enough of the history to have that connection, if that makes sense. And it also helped me to understand that while my experience in Appalachia is one that many might not really identify as being sort of the typical Appalachian experience, there are very many people living in conditions that are typical of Appalachia. And I just want to give back to the community, and this has helped me to provide that link.
Yeah, going along with that, I think that you'd be hard-pressed to find a student who went through what we did and came out of it and said that they weren't inspired to stay here, to be with these people. And if they told you they weren't, I'd kind of raise an eyebrow, and I'm like, really? You're not into this? To be so involved with the community, to get to know the people so that they know you, and people are walking down the street and it's hi, hello, everyone's on a first name basis. But at the same time, you're doing research, you're doing great things, you're getting A's. It's the gravy. I mean, it's just a great experience. I've always kind of been inspired to stay here and help, but at the same time, the four of us that took the class, we were all from Appalachia. I've heard that there are semesters in the past where there's 35 kids, and most of the kids are not from Appalachia. And maybe those kids who aren't from Appalachia, they're coming in from Pittsburgh or Cleveland or Columbus or Cincinnati. They come and they see, how the people live and how great the people here are, and the problems that we face, and how we're really trying to make things better from the ground up. And we're trying to develop a great community process. I don't see how anybody could look at that and say, oh, no, I'm not interested in being a part of that, because it makes you feel like you're at home when you're doing it. So I don't know of any better way to get an education, honestly, than that.
All right, so I think that thank you all very much and for your ideas and your reflections. So we want to we have just a couple minutes left, I think. But if there are any questions that we can answer, or anything that you want to comment on or follow up on, we'd be happy to talk about that. Any questions? Yeah. Oh.
Who are some other individuals in the community who are your compatriots in this?
So the question is, who are the other people in the community who are part of this effort?
Well, we are slowly building a community of people who are both campus and community partners that are getting to know one another and working on projects together. So up in our neck of the woods, the Buckeye Trail Association is the hiking trail that circles Ohio, and they have their office there, and so they're heavily engaged with this type of engagement. We have folks with Rural Action who are in our area, particularly the environmental education program and the watershed restoration programs. The Wayne Forest comes and goes on this, but we're always gigging them to be outside of their institutional framework and in the community. There's some great programs. The CARE program with Federal Hocking Schools has students that go out their freshman year through their senior year and stay engaged with teachers and schools in their community and get involved in the PTO and community events. And my wife's been involved in that, and there's a couple who are both from suburban communities outside of the area who are now married and living in Jacksonville and teaching in Southeastern Ohio schools. And relating back to their comments, one of the things we notice is some people get the bug to be here and stay here. It's kind of like you drink the Athens water and you stay. So some of the best citizens in Southeastern Ohio are people who came to Athens and got engaged with the community and the region and decided to stay. And so if you look particularly in the nonprofit sector, there are a lot of really fine people who've chosen to make their home here and be engaged. Renville, we've done some really cool things. Not only the marker, but we've reignited Emancipation Day, and we have folks like Dr. Robin Muhammad in African American Studies, and Franz Doppen and Michael Kopish at the Patton College who are involved, and former All-American basketball player from OU, Jerry Jackson, is the president of the group that's trying to save the town. So there's that type of connection. On February 23rd at the Southeastern Ohio History Center, and they're a good group for engaging with the community. They're having an evening presentation on the history of Renville and the projects that are going on there. So I could go on and on, but those are some examples. So, yeah. Other questions, comments? Gee, we stayed on time.
Just real quick, I was an undergraduate student in sociology myself, and I got to work with a lot of local organizations, the Habitat for Humanity here, and a couple other great ones. And one thing I was always interested in is, as a university student, really learning that even though the campus is kind of ours, the city isn't necessarily always ours. You know, it feels like a home, but when you stay here over summer, you learn that this is not, necessarily your town. There's so many more people here, and I've always kind of seen somewhat of a gap between a lot of university students understanding that and the community members here. And you'll get instances of bridging that gap, but for some students, what do you say to students who are more interested in bridging that gap with local Athens citizens or community members or international students who might be a little wary of engagement with local Athens citizens?
So I think your question is about some of the, town and gown relationship, and sometimes I think students, I'm always surprised when I meet a student who says that they've never really even been off campus very much into the town or whatever. And so you're talking about some of the experiences, the opportunities you had for working with some local organizations and realizing, if you're over here for the summer, realizing that there's a lot more to the town than just the university. And so for students who, I think that there can be some hesitation from both sides on that. So locals, and I grew up in a university town, and so I was very familiar with the cursing when the students came back to town, but now they pay my salary, so I'm really happy for those students. So anyways, so there's some conflict there, and I think some hesitation on both sides sometimes. But I think that, with some of the things that John just mentioned, and there's, many ways, not only the CCCE, but the Barb Harrison's Campus Involvement Center, thank you. There's a wealth of opportunity for students to get involved in those kinds of, and a whole variety of engagement projects, not just in rural Appalachia, but here in Athens and other spaces and places around the area. I see that as definitely an issue in terms of making those bridges, but I think it's something that continues to happen and is something that many people at the university are working on and many students are excited about doing too. I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah.
I have a thought too, as a former OU Bobcat and as an AmeriCorps Vista and then somebody who moved away and then came back and now works for nonprofits, any students interested in social justice or environmental justice or giving back should really look into the AmeriCorps Vista experience. They offer summer terms and full year terms. And that's a great way to rope people to come back into a rurally economically distressed area like myself or Grace here.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference to have the AmeriCorps in this area are remarkable contributors to the cause. And this notion, you used the term bridges. I think identifying and strengthening the bridge makers, bridge builders in the area. They're faculty members. Sometimes they're a really talented, engaged student, and they're community members. So figuring out who those people are, and I think one of the things the university, and I think people like the CCCE, Diana here, are doing is building a community of people and making it more intentional. And I think there's a lot of wonderful stuff going on at OU, but it needs more attention to be intentional, and I think we could really make a lot bigger difference than we do. Just getting folks to be aware of some of these rules for engagement is a big deal because we used to make this joke that, we got another OU bus coming today, we need to black out our teeth because we thought it was we were the poverty tour, So one of the things we did about 10 or so years ago is started to get some of the people together and talking about it. And we became more intentional about how do we do this and how do we make it productive as opposed to that we're just a museum of poverty for university students. And the response to our kind of nudging the university folks about this has been fantastic, really. People are very open to thinking about that, and it's like, it's kind of automatically, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be insensitive, but it's just raising awareness of what it's like. And politically in this country, we all know that we need to be figuring out the difference between privileged and educated people and people who aren't as privileged and rural and urban, and there's some big divisions here. And I think this type of engagement really helps break down some of those barriers and gets people to mix it up a little bit more and begin to understand each other a little more. So.
Oh, I hope so. That's a great place to end, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. We need to feel optimistic this weekend, right?
That's right.